So I am going to call the meeting to order if everybody's ready. So good afternoon. I am Gail Williams, board chair for the Nashville Metropolitan Transit Authority. Thanks again, everybody, for joining this special WebEx video conference meeting of this board. And today is October 22nd. Again, due to the continued COVID-19 pandemic and the continued declaration of a state of emergency by Governor Lee, we're holding this meeting without objection via video conference in order to conduct essential MTA business while protecting the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans. This meeting will be held in accordance with Governor Lee's Executive Order number 60. We have a full agenda today. Before we get started, I'm going to turn it over to staff to go over a few housekeeping matters so we know what we're doing and we can move smoothly today. But before I turn this over to Monica, I would really like to take this opportunity to welcome and congratulate our newest board member, Mary Griffin. Mary, welcome. We're so happy to have you. We're so happy that you have been appointed to this board, and I know in our conversation, you two are excited as well, and I'm just really excited to have you. Mary's an attorney with the state of Tennessee, a resident of Bellevue, and really cool, a longtime writer of the 24. Like, what about that? It's awesome to have a writer, right? You know, that used to be an anomaly till Freddie McConnell came on our board, and it was like, we're getting a writer. And so, but now we've had more writers, and Mary's so grateful that you are a dedicated MTA We Go writer. Mary, you want to introduce yourself and say hello, tell us a little more about yourself?
Thank you very much, first of all. I'm just so honored and privileged to be able to serve on this board and to be able to directly affect the lives of Nashvillians and people in the region. I'm also the mother of a child who has some disabilities, but has really thrived. And so she's excited about this. So you know you've made it in life when your mom's really excited. And she's now jealous too that, you know, that I'll get to ride the bus all over town and learn first about maybe a new route or something. I went to college there were no cars up in New York City. So I'm a big fan of public transportation and in many countries and in many cities. And so for me, this is just incredibly exciting. You know, rode the bus to school when I was growing up. So, I just want to listen and learn a lot. And I hope that people feel comfortable, you know, coming to me, letting me know, what they want me to know. And that's about it. I thank you, Gail. That I don't have a lot to say about me.
Well, we're excited to have you. And I understand you're a native Nashvillian, correct?
Yes. My dad was in the military, but I mean, I think when you move here when you're 11 and you stay here, and it's been quite a long time, and Nashville has changed so dramatically. But yes, I'm so proud to be from here, and especially right now to be able to serve. Thank you.
We are happy you are here, and we are going to put you to work right now. So let's be ready. Okay. Welcome aboard. And as we go along, Mary, if you have questions or anything, don't hesitate to ask. And we're right here to sort of support you as you go through this first meeting. The second one, you're on your own, but this one, we got you. That sounds good. Thanks so much and welcome. Monica, any housekeeping rules?
Yes, guys, I ask everyone just to please remember to mute your phones and or your computers until you're acknowledged by Chair Williams to speak. Also, please remember to use the raise your hand feature if you have a question or a comment. And also, please remember to lower your hand when you're done speaking. Lastly, when it's time to vote, we ask all board members to please unmute yourselves. And if you are in favor of the vote, we ask that you vote by saying aye. If you're opposing an action item, we ask that you state your name for the record. And these are our housekeeping rules for today.
Thank you so much, and thanks for getting us together and setting up the WebEx. Appreciate it. So if I could start to call this meeting in order, I will start with a roll call. And when I call your name, if you will repeat your name and say present. Janet Miller.
Janet Miller, present.
Thank you. Walter Searcy.
Walter Searcy, present.
Mary Griffin.
Mary Griffin, present.
Gail Carr-Williams, present. And it's my understanding that Hannah Paramore Green is not on the call. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you so much. Additional attendees, when I call your name, if you too would repeat your name and say present. Board and Secretary and General Counsel, Margaret Bim.
Margaret Bim, present.
CEO Steve Bland.
Steve Bland, present.
CAO Rita Roberts Turner.
Rita Roberts Turner, present.
CFO Ed Oliphant.
Ed Oliphant, present.
Director of Service Quality Dan Freiberg.
Dan Freudberg, present.
Director of Marketing and Communication Jason Minzer. I have on my scarf, Jason.
Glad to hear it, Gail. Jason Minzer, present.
Chief Engineer Trey Walker.
Trey Walker, present.
And Executive Assistant and Board Liaison Monica House.
Monica House, present.
Thank you. So that includes all those given reports today. And so the first action item on our agenda is approval of the September 24th, 2020 minutes. If I could have, first of all, any questions, any thoughts, any changes, additions, deletions?
Move the adoption of the minutes.
Second, Janet Miller.
There's a motion by Walter Searcy, a second by Janet Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think that's everybody though, right? So the motion carries and we have minutes. Thank you so much. The next action item I have are public comments. And with this special space that we're in, we ask that people give us their name prior to 5 o'clock on yesterday, which was Wednesday. And to my knowledge, we have two people, Darius Knight and John Bull, who would like to give public comments. I will remind them both, which I think they both know, that you have 3 minutes for your public comments. So I'll start with Darius Knight. Is he on the line?
Darius said he is on the call. Darius, if you're on the call, we ask that you please unmute yourself at this time and begin speaking. Madam Chair, if we can go ahead with Mr.
Sure.
John Bull and we can come back to Mr. Darius Knight.
Absolutely. Mr. Bull, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mr. Bull. How are you?
Well, we're doing well. We're doing well. Name is John Bull. Live at 370 Wallace Road, South Nashville. Route 52 is the one I do use to get in and out. I will say a welcome to Ms. Griffin to the board. Some comments. The Nolensville corridor, the improvements look really good. I'll note that Public Works scrounged around in the back of their departmental couch to find some money and put in pedestrian signals on all four corners at Wallace Road and Nolensville Pike. Think Southern Hills Hospital at that intersection, which is right at the end of the Nolensville corridor project, which is just one more intersection, and that's about as good as you can do. That Public Works needs a shout out for that. I've looked at the Better Bus Mass Transit Plan, just glanced at it. Very detailed. Y'all done a really good job of putting that together. The staff deserves some some cookies for that one. A couple of comments. The Murfreesboro corridor plan looks just magnificent, and that would be that would be a very good next step, to be sure. But however that floats. A couple of comments in the Antioch area. I think it was using Lyft to get people to the closest bus stop. That's a great idea. Perhaps WeGo could find some funding so the rider is not charged more than the bus fare to get to those bus stops. But that's a good feeder until, or if a local bus route is in place. The Music City Star, the only 3 runs a day, if that could be improved on, hey, the Dean administration and I think the Bredesen administration couldn't get CXS to cut loose on track time, but if there were more than 3 runs a day, that would be an enhancement. I'm still reading that report. Just got it yesterday, I think. A couple of comments. The signage on the buses, the flashing signs up front. Having Wi-Fi is a wonderful enhancement for the buses. Perhaps you explore adding the capability of the Wi-Fi so that if a lot of people are not using it once, the net doesn't slow down. But that's a great thing, I think, having the Wi-Fi. The buses, I've been quarantining in place, trying to limit getting out no more than once a week. But the buses are on time and they're certainly clean. A thought on the high volume routes. Explore putting bicycle racks for 3 bikes on the front of the bus instead of the 2 right now. I've noticed, especially on the Murfreesboro route, what's that, Route 55, that a lot of bikes are ending up on the buses. That's my comment. If we got any time left over, I'll give it back to Mr. Knight or the rest of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Appreciate you being here with us today. And take care of yourself and stay healthy.
Oh, and one more thing. The plan to have the WeGo and Public Works combined together, I think, is a key element for the mass transit plan. But excuse me, I meant to put that on the front end.
That's
and
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bull. We owed you that minute back at least. So many times you didn't take your whole 3, so we're good. And thanks for being here.
Fair enough.
Mr. Knight, are you online yet? Well, what we'll move on. And Ms. House, if you see Mr. Knight comes in, we'll find a way to sort of bring him back in. But beyond Mr. Knight, that closes our public comment section of the agenda.
I'm here, Ms. Williams.
Oh, are you there, Mr. Knight?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm well, thank you. It's good to hear you.
Thank you. I want to say hello to everybody. I want to welcome as well our new board member, and I'm glad that you also take transit. My comments are as follows. The first one is going to be about our 60-foot buses. I've run into a few different routes between the 23 Dickerson Road and the Route 56. They seem to have an issue with the New Flyer buses. Seats broken, down to the metal, braking issues, axle issues, things that are of a greater concern. And I just want to say to that complaint, I know that they're having to use the 60-foot buses more often than they typically would, since, you know, the pandemic is a big issue right now and overcrowding. But if the staff could, if they really could, please, by all means, please get those new flyer buses in and get them corrected, and especially the part of it where the flap seems to fly out and hit people in the back of their head. The second thing actually is a question. I just wanted to really kind of bring up about the referendum. And I'm really more concerned with it. I actually got an email from the vice mayor a few days ago because I actually the entire council about the concern if that referendum does come through and becomes up on a ballot in December. My fear is that cutting Sunday service and just cutting service is, one of the things I know that this board does not want to do. I know that the CEO does not want to do that either. But I have pressed the council and explained to them if these things are done, they're going to create more of a problem for this city because there are going to be more people unemployed because they won't be able to get to work, school, and pretty much anywhere else. Because it's going to be very detrimental that transit is running at least to its normal rate, even if we can't move on to any of the things for Better Bus at the current time frame. The third thing will actually have to do with cleaning. I've actually had to clean a few buses myself with my own cleaning things, my own gloves, and passing out my own mask that I have bought because some of the drivers explained that there are times that they get down to Central and, there's only but so many people that are able to clean one bus at a time. So they're not able to get to them all at once. So I try to do the nice thing and try to help our drivers out because we don't want them out with COVID so that we don't lose a trip. The fourth thing will actually be a concern with COVID. Now, as of currently, they're running the air, and some drivers actually have a few windows open, just for the safety precautions, even though customers are supposed to wear a mask. My concern is what are we going to do when it gets colder and the drivers then start to run the heat? Because I haven't seen anything from the CDC explaining anything about heat and how that would be a possibility. I'll just make it known that all of our new buses from the 1700s above to the 1900s, they all do have windows that do not open. So I'm just wondering, and out of curiosity, what the staff does have planned when it comes down to that issue. The fifth thing would be, I just wanted to know when the 19 Gillick 40-foot diesel buses will arrive this year, because the drivers are complaining that they do need these buses. And finally, the sixth thing, I just wanted to say, on behalf of the operators, the great job that they're doing during this entire situation. Many of them are working really, really hard. They're very respectful. There's only been one that I've had to reach out to staff about multiple times, and hopefully they can get that corrected. But I just want to say to everybody, including non-operators, we appreciate everything that you're doing and your efforts. And I would just ask of the board, please, 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 when it comes to our council and our mayor and our vice mayor, please reach out to them to stress the importance that transit does not need to be cut, even if that referendum does become a play and it does pass. Please make sure that you stress that because I'm going to continue to do that myself. Thank you all.
We promise. Thank you, Mr. Knight. You stay healthy and safe.
Thank you. You all do the same.
Appreciate your comments today. So there are no further comments. Is that correct, Ms. House?
That is correct.
Well, that closes the public comment section of our agenda. And I will at this time turn it over to Mr. Searcy for the Operations and Finance Committee reports and action items.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Monica, the agenda for me because none of those documents are available to me where I currently sit.
Sure thing.
All right. Thank you. All right. My committee, I now call to order. And
Walter, are you there?
I'm here, and I'm asking the CFO, Ed Oliphant, to mount his horse and ride in with his report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we have on pages 9 and 10, and it's on the screen as well. We have the financial results through August of 2020. This is our second month of the year. I will concentrate on the right-hand side as we've gone through 2 months. And just as a reminder, as I go through this, if the board or if the committee and board will remember that we did assume full service when we did our budgeting. At the time we did it, we didn't know how quickly the market would return. And sadly, we see where we are right now. But I will continue. As you can see on the passenger fares or the operating revenues, we're seeing some unfavorables. We're running a little bit lower than we thought we would as far as passenger fares, but actually holding our own in access ride, again, based on where we thought we would be with revenues due to COVID. The reason you see the large contract revenue unfavorable balance is due to, this is the service related to what we provide to RTA going down into Rutherford County, and they are operating at a reduced service level, and consequently, we are not collecting as much contract revenue, nor are we actually incurring the expense on the expense side. As far as the non-transportation revenues, that again is related to the rent abatements that we are currently doing with Dunkin' Donuts and Premier. And we will be using CARES Act funding to help offset that for whatever expenses we do incur that we used to cover with those. So we are in good shape in that regard. You can see in the federal, state, local, we are pretty much online with our local assistance from Metro. And eventually we'll get into some CARES. As you see, we did this month go ahead and do $8.4 million worth of CARES Act to supplant what we did not receive from Metro in terms of our funding for this year. We will start giving you monthly updates. This is the first one, but we'll give you monthly updates as to where we stand on the use of the CARES Act. And as you can see over on the far right, we did anticipate using up to $29.5 million. In the expense category, one would expect, since we budgeted for full service, that we would see some favorable balances. You do see that in labor and fringes, basically due to some open positions that we have right now. And actually, some of this has to do with the spread. It'll start to balance itself out, the spread of how we anticipated our budget to be spent, because some of that was related to uniforms and tool allowances for our employees that we thought would come faster than they have, but we will see that balance back out as we go through the year. As far as the services go, we are operating with less security around, especially since the school kids are not down at WeGo Central right now, and we are not using our overflow taxi services nor our access on demand services as much as we had budgeted, and kind of following what we did last year. So that's the reason for that. Fuel continues to be favorable, again, because of lower service levels that we're operating on. And we do have our hedging that has helped us as well. The only other thing I would highlight is in the other category, you see that being very favorable. And again, almost half of that, or more than half of that, is actually due to curtailment of any travel training that we have due to the COVID. If you'll flip the screen, please, and go to page 10, you see the balance sheet, and I basically highlight about 2/3 of the way down in that first column. You see the note payable is down to $1.7 million as far as our line of credit. And I'm happy to say in September's report, you will see that that was paid down to $0. And the only other thing I would highlight on this page is at the bottom, you see our accounts receivable and accounts payable agings. And in terms of transparency on the accounts receivable side, RTA, the Regional Transit Authority, does owe us $273,000 out of that $591. And on the accounts payable side, we owe them basically for that we've collected of about $8,000. So unless there's any questions regarding the financials, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ed. Gang,
Hey,
any questions?
Walter, can I ask a question?
Yes, please. Yeah, yes.
Thank you. Hey, Ed, are you starting to see, the COVID curve it seems like it has started back up. Is ridership starting to decline more, or are you finding that it's just leveled off?
I think it's pretty much leveled off. Dan Freudberg will be discussing that on the operations report. But
Okay,
as far
great.
as I can tell, the revenues, from the revenue standpoint, it seems to be pretty level with where we've gotten back up to. And I'm not going to steal Dan's thunder, but somewhere between 12 to 14,000 riders, and the revenue is reflective of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, that's a reasonable segue to Dan's report. So, Mr. Freuberg, will you please replace the CFO in his position and deliver the monthly operating statement?
Yes, not a problem. Good afternoon. I can go ahead and try to address that question, Janet, really quickly. We have seen over the past few weeks, actually, an increase in ridership. We haven't seen a response to the recent increase in cases over just the last week or two. At least in terms of the number of passengers that we're seeing. It's held pretty much steady for the last 5 or 6 weeks, but it is something that that we'll continue to monitor. We do have schools starting to come back in phases in person as well, so it's possible that that's to some degree offsetting some of the regular riders that may be choosing to stay home, but we'll definitely keep an eye on those trends and have more updated information next month when we have a little bit better picture of what we might have seen an effect of those increases in cases on our ridership. But overall, looking at page 16 for our month-to-month comparison for August, we are down close to 60% overall in ridership. That, again, is pretty consistent with what we've seen at many other agencies our size, and actually somewhat better than what a lot of the larger agencies are still experiencing right now in the major cities in the U.S. That the lower ridership does result in a relatively significant increase in the relative cost per hour of service, which you can see with the 46% increase compared to last year. But that really is mostly a result of the fact that we have these fixed and overhead costs that are just being spread out over fewer operating hours. So things like, for example, my salary thankfully hasn't changed yet, at least in response to the pandemic, but those kinds of costs, when you have fewer hours to basically spread out those costs over, you do see that increase in the unit cost to deliver service. We also have some more unusual costs that we're incurring, for example, for increased cleaning activities associated with the pandemic. Moving on down to the service quality section, we're doing very well in overall trip completion, thanks to the work of our operations team in strategically using buses that we have placed around the city to be able to respond to services incidents, which is even more important now that we need to be very sensitive about the number of individuals that are on our vehicles. Unfortunately, there are still times where our vehicles get to capacity where social distancing becomes difficult, and sometimes our operators do need to pass individuals that are waiting for the bus. We try to get another vehicle out there as soon as possible through those additional resources to minimize the impact on customers. But we have seen a number of complaints regarding pass-ups, which are reflected in our passengers carried per complaint statistics for bus, which are a bit lower this year than they were last year. The overall absolute number of complaints hasn't really increased, but again, we're carrying many fewer passengers, so you do see that effect there. Moving on to page 17. We've only got 2 months into the fiscal year so far, but the trends in terms of ridership and other key performance indicators have actually been pretty consistent for those 2 months. But we'll continue to see what the effect of the changing external conditions related to the pandemic have on our operations moving forward, and continue, of course, to balance what our response is to those changing conditions. So with that, unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Dan's report.
So I know that there's a question, and I'm sorry, Walter, to interrupt.
No,
There's
that's
a
all right.
question in the question and answer section. I just want to let you know we don't answer those questions during the board meeting. However, a staff member will be back with you to give you an answer to your question. Hopefully, as soon as the meeting is over, somebody will respond to it. So I apologize for not having an answer for you right away. I'm sorry, Walter, you're back on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
No, that's quite all right. We now have, we have reached our section regarding upcoming procurement projects. And I ask everybody to consult the list that Monica has posted for us, and that Rita, the CAO, has prepared for us regarding same. Stop, bus shelters, benches, and related items. And the second section is vertical circulation maintenance, better known as elevators and escalators. Those, you see the anticipated published dates. The published date has already been attained. We are now looking at, actually the bids are already in, apparently. The estimated value of those collective projects are $1 million, and the elevator maintenance is $300,000. That, I believe that concludes the in this period. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Well, Mr. Searcy, I'm not letting you off the hook that easily because Ed wants to speak a little bit more. The Pension Overview and CEO Signature Authority. So how about we bring Ed back to that one?
Let's go, Ed.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, on pages 11 through 14, you have a discussion item regarding the Davidson Transit Organization and Amalgamated Transit Union pension plan. We thought it'd be a good idea to have an open discussion first about the history of the plan and what role MTA as the guarantor of that plan should be, and what should or shouldn't be signed by the guarantor relating to the pension plan. I'm definitely not going to go through all the details, but hope you had a chance to read all the history. We also have in attendance in the meeting here, Sean Sullivan and Mike Yop, the attorneys for the pension plan, as well as Margaret Bim, as we all know well, as the secretary and our outside counsel, to answer any questions that I might not be able to. But as you did read, the plan's been around since about 1945, with both Nashville and Chattanooga being joint participants. One thing I didn't include that I think is important that we need to understand as to the structure of everything is back in the 70s, a lot of the private transit companies were going broke, and the federal government stepped in and made federal funding available to the cities to help buy out the folding companies in order to maintain public transit in the cities. In Tennessee, due to the conflicts between federal and state law relating to the existing surviving employees of those companies being able to collectively bargain and strike, separate companies were set up to maintain the employees to support the transit agency, and that way you could maintain public transit and they would still have their rights as they had before they closed down. The current version of that employment arm is the Davidson Transit Organization. So back in 1979, the plan was amended and restated to comply with ERISA, and at that time, an application was made with the IRS to make it a governmental plan. You're probably wondering why you want to do that, but by doing so, it would make the plan not subject to the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, which requires pension plans or pension plan sponsors to pay premiums to protect the plan should the plan become financially unstable. The reason to be a government plan is due to the fact that the premiums to the PBGC that would be required are actually pretty expensive, and I'll touch on that a little bit later when I talk about the health of the plan. But this began about a 20-year process or ordeal, if you want to call it that, to gain a status as a government plan. In that time frame, in 1989, the plan was split. Chattanooga and Nashville split, and Mike Yopp, who was one of the attorneys, continued working with the plan to gain its governmental status. Finally, in 1996, the IRS gave a determination that the plan was considered governmental, and based on MTA being a guarantor of the plan, the PBGC dropped its stance and recognized the plan as governmental. In conjunction with this, and it's noted in the verbiage, in January of '97, the MTA board did take an action to accept being a guarantor of the plan. I've also included on page 14, you'll see some questions that we thought were pertinent to the board and to help open up the discussion, and I'm going to kind of walk through those, but would start by just kind of giving you an overall health result of the plan right now. Now, we're currently doing the valuation for the plan. We do that every year. So I'm going to use the evaluation from last year, which is as of June of 2019. So at that time, the plan had a liability of about $66.9 million. The assets at the plan at that time were about $52 million. So by doing the math, you can see that the unfunded portion was about $14.8 million, or 78. In other words, another way to look at it is we were 78% funded. One of the things that I think is important that the actuaries highlight is the fact that between the employer contributions and the employee contributions, those contributions actually cover more than what the benefits that are being paid out and administrative expenses. So I really do believe that the plan is actually at a healthy point at this point, and actually the assets were at 52.1, and as of June of this year they're at about 53.9. So from that standpoint, I think the plan is healthy. One of the questions we thought would be good is under what conditions would MTA be called upon to satisfy the contingent liability, or what circumstances would cause the plan to terminate. Really, in talking with the attorneys, and they can certainly speak up if there are questions, those circumstances would be where the plan becomes unstable and is unable to cover the liabilities, the current liabilities. Not when we talk about the $66 million being the liability, that's all the way out through the plan, looking at all the retirees being paid out for their actuarially estimated lives. So we actually, as I said, do cover the current, or the plan does cover the current liabilities. But if it became unable to do that, that would be one instance where the plan would probably freeze, not necessarily terminate, but where the unfunded liability or the guarantor might be called upon to meet some unfunded liability. The $14 million, I did have the actuaries go back and look at what it would look like right now if something like that happened, just to give you an idea, because you have to keep in mind that there are some people that are contributing to the plan that aren't eligible to receive retirement benefits. So the $14 million that's unfunded, if it's something happened right now, that would drop down to about $5.7 million. And I'm not saying that that would have to be put forth all at once, but again, I'm just wanting to generate conversation for the plan. Who would enforce the guarantee, which is another question. Basically, the pension committee would be responsible for asking MTA to belly up to the bar, if you will, for whatever they are a guarantor of. As I said, back in 97, the MTA board did agree to be the guarantor of the plan, but I guess that raises questions as to what would the responsibility be for the board, i.e. in terms of changes to the plan, amendments to the plan. Past history has shown that when amendments were done, the CEO of MTA would sign as the guarantor of the plan. And I am actually not going to try to be the legal answer for that. And we'll ask in just a second for some opinion to give you an idea of what that means to be guarantor. I don't know that it would necessarily be the plan, or excuse me, that MTA is approving any changes to the plan, but rather it would be acknowledging what's going on in the plan as a guarantor. I think that might be what it is, but we'll let the lawyers determine that. As far as the oversight on the plan, which we also raised as a question, the obvious answer is the pension committee, which in the verbiage that you read is basically made up of the myself, Rita Roberts Turner as the chief administrative officer, and then two ATU employees that are on the plan. They have the fiduciary responsibility for the oversight of the plan. So that's the straight up answer to that. And then as far as who looks out for the interests of MTA, my answer to that would be myself and the CAO as members of that pension committee would be there to back up MTA and obviously if we had problems communicate with MTA of issues that might be coming up. So with that, I really would like to go back to either Mike or Sean to address what does it mean to be a guarantor on a legal basis, and what does that mean for MTA's board?
This is Mike Yop. Thank you all for letting me appear here. I've been representing the retirement committee since 1979 when all this saga started, and really have appreciated the opportunity to help y'all. A guarantor, there's two kinds of guarantors. There's a guarantee of performance and a guarantee of payment. And basically what this guarantee, as I read it, is that it's a guarantee of payment. So that if the plan were not able to make its payments as they became due, then the MTA would step in and make contributions to the plan sufficient to make those payments. And with respect to approving the changes to the plan, there is a law in the a guarantor, I'm sorry, if there's a material alteration to their obligation, then the guarantor can be released from the plan. And so historically, rather than try to figure out or determine whether or not something had a material alteration to the plan, MTA, through its chief executive, has reviewed all of those, and they've acknowledged those. And by doing so, it makes and it ensures that the guarantee will continue unabated.
And with that, Mr. Searcy, I open it up to questions that the board might have. This is a discussion item. There's no action to be taken. But I just wanted the board to be aware of the guarantee that's in place and
Sure.
What signature authority Steve should have in terms of making when changes are made to the pension plan.
I believe Janet Miller had a question. Jan.
I do have a question. Thanks, Walter. This is really interesting. The whole topic's really interesting. My question is, you know, as America ages out, these pension plans, the burden are getting larger and larger over time. Are we seeing that happen with this plan so that in 5 years we may be looking at $100 million versus 67?
I can answer that question. Yes, you will continue to see the liabilities grow. I already know there will be a growth, and basically we up to this point, Janet, and I'm kind of very pleased with it, as I've mentioned, the contributions that have been made by the employer and the employee have been more than what has been required to be paid out of the plan. So we've continued to be able to build the principal on the investments, as well as the investments doing very well. One of the obvious questions to that is what happens if the market goes south in a hurry? That would definitely be an issue. It would not mean that the plan would collapse, but it would just put more onus on what the contribution would need to be from the employer. Because at this point, one thing I didn't talk about is that under the collectively bargained agreement, the employees contribute 4.5% of their salary to the plan, and basically DTO makes up the difference, which at this point is a little under 8%, but I've kept it at 8% just to try to keep the plan as healthy as it can possibly be. But the answer to your question is yes, they will continue to grow.
And just as a follow-on, I mean, I think we're in great shape, right? It's really good that we are in such good shape, because there are plans that are not in such great shape. I guess my question, it may sound kind of smart alecky, is, I mean, what's the alternative to us being the guarantor here, right?
And I can answer that too, or at least shed some light on that. I also had the actuaries let me know what would happen if it were not a guaranteed plan or a government plan, excuse me. If it were considered an independent plan, you would see and I'll just use the past maybe 7 years as history. The PBGC, as you saw in what I put in there, was about $593,000 of premiums on an annual basis. That's the cap can be charged. So if you take that into account, had the actuaries run it through, and basically our $4 million contribution that we've done over this past year would grow to about $8.5 million a year. So you'd see about a $5 million increase in what we would have had to have contributed. So on top of the contribution, you'd also have the other 593 a year. So it would be a pretty big hit for the plan to be able to keep pace, and obviously would require current year contributions to go up from the employer, which DTO would have to find from somewhere, and obviously would probably want MTA to be able to help in that regard. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have a hand raised on the floor. CEO Bland's hand is raised.
Thank you.
Go right ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had asked Ed to put this on the agenda originally, going back to quite some time ago when he had asked me to sign a guarantee. And I agree with his assessment. The plan is healthy. I think it's important that the board understand the nature of this obligation, because we really don't deal with at the MTA board level a lot of the employment policies that are handled by DTO. And if for whatever reason, and I understand the cash flow, but coming back to Janet's issue of, all of a sudden the market goes in the wrong direction, our employee census goes in the wrong direction, some of the actuarial assumptions move in the wrong direction, and you could see literally in a 1 year period a doubling or tripling of necessary contributions. And the MTA we don't have our own funding source. We go to Metro and ask for general fund budget obligation every year. So essentially, if that were ever to come to pass, not even calling into question the guarantee if the plan were, quote, failing, but just those variations in annual contributions, right, frankly, for all intents and purposes, it comes out of other parts of our budget, including service. So, and this is not something we have to resolve today, but I do think it's worth some conversation. And I think Margaret should be involved with this as well, in figuring out what level of review the MTA board and MTA leadership should have, looking over the plan to make sure that our interests are protected and the interests of our riders are protected, as well as all of the DTO employees. So that's really my reason for bringing it up. It's, for lack of a better word, I know Ed and Rita and the union folks who are the trustees spend an awful lot of time and an awful lot of thought process and energy on it. But we don't, from the MTA perspective, it's sort of been running on autopilot, probably going back to 1979. So I do think it's something that we need to be mindful of.
Thank you, Steve. That was an important addition. Let's ask Sean Sullivan to chime in. We have not heard from him. We heard from Mike Yop. Let's hear from Sean Sullivan. Then I have a question to ask after that.
Absolutely. So I work with Mike Yob. When Mike came to Waller, our firm, about 20 years ago, he'd already been working with this plan a great deal. And so I assisted him and continue to work a great deal with the committee on this. I'll echo Mike's comments. I agree with his analysis on in responding to those questions, circumstances where the guarantee may be enforced or and the oversight with respect to the plan. So let me know if there's anything in particular. I do end up taking the first draft of most of the amendments.
Thanks, Sean. We appreciate your input. Ed, let me ask you this question because you mentioned when you were discussing the plan that there's a category or a class or a sliver of persons who are covered by the plan but who are not eligible for draws from the plan. Be a little bit more specific about who those persons are and under what circumstances do they fall in that category?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Basically, after 90 days, you start contributing. It's either 60 or 90. I apologize. 60 or 90 days, you start contributing. You start having the 4.5% taken out of your pay to be contributed to the plan. The vesting of the plan is over a 7-year period, and then in order to actually retire, you have to reach the age of 65, or what we call the rule of 84, as it currently is, a combination of your years of service and your age. So if at any one point, like, and I had the actuaries use like right now, as an example. Hello?
Yes, we're still with you. Yeah.
Okay. So there would be anybody that has not been here at least 7 years, and if something happened to the plan, let's just say it was terminated and benefits had to be paid out, those people wouldn't continue to receive any kind of retirement. They would just get a refund of whatever they put back or whatever they have contributed to the plan. So it wouldn't be a long-term liability for us for those people that haven't vested yet. Does that make sense?
Sure. It's just we would be liable for their contribution to that point.
They're correct for their contribution to that point, but not a long-term liability in terms of the people that were in retirement. Got it.
Any other questions from the board?
I think it's just been an amazing conversation and a great conversation, but it's a lot to take in, particularly if you don't do pensions every day. But I do think that what might be good for us, if Steve and Ed are comfortable with it, that maybe we come back to this conversation after we get a chance to digest all this, maybe in a couple months, and sort of see where we are and see if we have more questions. And I think after today and reading everything you submitted, Ed, it'll give us enough time to process it a little bit more, and maybe even have a greater understanding to ask more questions, or at least seek clarification.
I think that would be absolutely fine, because trust me, I learned a lot through this process as well. I thought I knew a lot about it, and I do, but there was a lot that I didn't as far as the history. I thought that was a very good read. So yes, please absorb, and you can certainly feel free to reach out to me individually and ask questions as well. So.
And Steve, you and I can work on a time to put it back on the agenda. And Mike and Sean, really appreciate you all being willing to continue to help us with it and to sort of, help provide your understanding for all of us to better understand.
Thank you for letting us present to the committee. Appreciate it. I assume we can sign off now, Ed?
Sure.
If Walter says so, because Walter's the chair, I'm just.
Right, Walter's the chair. I can't say for the chair.
Okay.
Well, you guys are free to, go back to the tee box.
Okay. Y'all have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Have a good rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, y'all.
That was great.
With that, Madam Chairperson, I do, in fact, return the gavel to you.
Oh, well, you're awfully kind. Great meeting. Great things for us to sort of work on. So thank you very much. At this time, I'm gonna hand this over to Ms. Miller for the NICE committee.
Great, thank you. Welcome Mary Griffin. We're so excited to have our empty board seat filled. So super excited to have you. I can't wait to get to know you a little bit. What I'd like to do first is just check in with Steve on our timing and our agenda. I know we've got an action item on the free fair day that we absolutely need to take up, and we need to talk about the transit center. Should we hurt Jason and Dan's feelings and skip those reports, or?
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, coming back to Dan's earlier point, as long as we don't cut his pay proportional to our ridership, I will try and talk Dan and Jason off the ledge and defer, because Hillsborough does have some time sensitivity to it. I know Anna Emerson, our designer, is available today as well. So, you know, those two, I think, could be deferred. Okay,
Dan, Jason, it's not personal. We love you. You get to keep your pay as is, but we're moving on. So we've got Trey Walker with us to talk about the Hillsborough Transit Center. Give us an update on that.
All right. I feel like I'm the backup quarterback that's been thrust into the game. It's some sort of a fourth quarter scenario here, but happy to be with you all this afternoon. And as Steve mentioned, we are going to talk a little bit on just an update of the Hillsborough Transit Center, updating our design progress, and then as well as we've talked in the past, the progress of the project with Metro Nashville Public Schools on their renovation of Hillsborough High School. Just some overview and some background. The Transit Center is located along Hillsborough Road, adjacent to the high school and immediately across from Hillsborough Pike from the Green Hills Mall. Monica, you can just go to the next slide. Excellent. So here's a site plan of Hillsborough High School and the Transit Center, as well as within the surrounding area. So just to get everybody oriented, the mall at Green Hills and their parking lot is to the south on that image. That has the aerial component that you can see. And then the site plan for the renovated Hillsborough High School is on the top of the page, with the Transit Center being on the top roadway segment running from the left side of the page to the right side of the page. So it's just an overview of the project. The Transit Center will replace a heavily utilized but undersized stop that is currently scheduled to be demolished as part of the high school renovation project, and the intersection relocation is the intersection that you can see on your screen there about a quarter of the way from the left side of the page. That intersection is being redesigned and reconstructed as part of the overall project. I want to update just to remind the board of some previous board actions that we've taken. This is the fourth time we've discussed this project this year. We've had 3 previous action items that we had very early on in the year and one over the summer. The action items earlier in the year included our contributions to the reconstruction of this intersection. So current operations for the area involve us pulling off to the shoulder of Hillsborough Pike at the very left side of the screen that you can see there. And then having to kind of just work our way in whenever someone's really nice to us at the end of the road. And also, it's very undersized. It's got about 30 feet of sidewalk for what a stop that, particularly when school is dismissing, can accommodate about 80 students at once. So with this project, we're able to vastly expand our capacity at the station, as well as improve safety for both pedestrians as well as bus operations. So that was one board action item. The second board action item solidified our agreement with Metro Nashville Public Schools as a partner on the project, and spoke to the agreement for the property itself, as well as our long-term operations and maintenance of the facility. And then finally, in June, the board took an action for a small piece of construction for the site, dealing with underground utilities and foundations as the school project advances, to keep us in lockstep with the advancement of that project. So today, I have Anna Roberts, who will be presenting with me. Anna is the architect for the Metro Nashville Public Schools renovation of Hillsborough High School, as well as an architect for our project, really bringing some synergy to the design team here, making sure that the projects are advanced within lockstep. She'll be reviewing the design and progress of the Metro Nashville Public Schools project, and I'm just going to help get you oriented here at the beginning and jump in with a little bit of a schedule and update for what the board can anticipate as we move forward with this project later on this year. So with the image that you have on the screen, again, the transit center is oriented on one side of the road. We have one-way activity coming in from the southern part of Hillsborough Pike off Abbott Martin. Vehicles will be merging to the right and accessing what is currently shoulder, but will be constructed as a bus-only lane that's shown on the top of the roadway section there. And we'll have space for 3 bus bays to accommodate our present-day operations, which includes the Route 7, but also future extensions for nearby routes such as the Route 17, 12th Avenue South bus, as well as space to accommodate access ride as well. Operations will be safer than present day as we're incorporating a queue jump, which will enable a bus-only permitted entrance into traffic and be able to initiate routes moving forward from the south to the north as we head in town. The amenities across the site include 2 large canopy structures, which I'll show you here in a minute, that constitute those 3 loading bays, and they straddle the entrance to the Hillsborough High School and include coverage for full boarding and alighting, as well as seating and next bus information. And then the small building that you see about the middle of the page, slightly to the right, is a climate-controlled waiting area with seating information displays and a work counter located for patrons that have sort of a longer layover between routes. In addition to that, we are including a operator restroom. This is an end-of-line location to us, and our operations team has highlighted that finding those end-of-line restroom locations is highly valuable for our operators that are out on the roads. So we're providing that as part of an operator-only access to a restroom within that building as well. We're providing several multimodal connections across the site. So we've got some areas highlighted on this image for bike parking, as well as a scooter corral. Scooters are not as prevalent in the Green Hill area, but we decided to design for it moving forward anyway, similar to the corrals that you see downtown. And there's also a pickup drop-off lane that is separate from bus operations, shown in the small cutout, kind of about 2/3 of the way to the right side of the page. Monica, would you skip to the next slide, please? So this is a rendering that we performed for the site, showing the transit center in the foreground and the Hillsborough High School in the background. As you can see, the 2 large canopy structures, one to the left that accommodates bus loading for 2 bays, that entrance to the high school being left open, and then a smaller canopy structure to the south for the 3rd bay. And as you move further down to the right side of the page, you see the climate controlled enclosed waiting area on that portion of the rendering. When we went to the community, we heard a lot of comments about safety and security for the station. So we have been working with Metro Nashville Public Schools and their security team in the location of our cameras for the site to have good surveillance of the site, working on our security and staffing plan for the facility, and we'll continue to develop that as design moves forward. And then finally, we're working with the Emergency Communications Department with Metro on the placement and service of emergency call boxes. This is our first venture into emergency call boxes. So we'll be able to utilize it at this facility and then use our lessons learned as we develop future transit centers. So this time I'm going to turn it over to Anna, who will walk through the progress of the MNPS project, as well as some features of our design. Next slide, Monica.
Thanks, Ray. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the site. I know many people are familiar with the Hillsborough High School area, but this is just a conceptual site plan that shows we have 28 acres. We touch each of the roads that are around us. We are surrounded by residential on one side and commercial on the other side, which gives us a really interesting feel right in the middle. I am going to try and orient you. If you look on the slide that you're seeing, the area in white is the new portion of the building that we built in phase 1 that was completed last summer of 2019. The beige portion of the building is the renovation of existing space that we finished this summer, August of 2020. We are now working in the center of the site on the parking garage and flex field area and the football field area as our phase 3. And then we'll have a phase 4 that will start in April and run through August of 2021 to kind of button up the edges. That'll be the tennis courts, the softball field, detention ponds at the edge, and of course, everything along the Hillsborough curb line, including the MTA work. Next slide, please. A couple of pictures just showing you where we are. These were just taken this week. What you can see in the distance is phase 1 and 2 are complete. You can see a lot of the area along the roadway on our side is really not completed. We are having to use all of that graveled area that you see in the front of the school as temporary parking while we work on the parking in the back. So that really limits our ability to do a lot of work along Hillsborough Road until our covered parking is finished and we can move all of those cars to the back. I think this does give you a really good indication of what's going on Hillsborough Road. Lot of high voltage lines and communication lines on the west side of the street. We are actually taking down all of the lines on the east side of the street. We're taking down the old wooden poles. We are going underground with our electrical. We're doing new site lighting, new sidewalks. And I think you'll see that on the Hillsborough side, it will look completely different in appearance once we get all of that tidied up. Just to orient you a little bit, right above the white van in the foreground is the existing Hillsborough High School sign. That's about where the end of the kiss and ride section, our carpooling section is. And then we move to the north all the way to the intersection with the Green Hills Mall. So that'll give you a pretty good idea of how far we stretch along there. And if anyone is in the area, that hopefully will give you a little bit of orientation. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a view looking a little bit further to the south. There we go. So what you're seeing is the existing building, the 1953 piece that's been completely renovated. The area on the left side is an existing 1995 piece, and peeking over in the back, you'll see the phase 1 piece that we built last summer. What you're also seeing right above the same white van is the beginnings of a detention pond, the part that we were able to put in, and those items will also be tidied up in phase 4 beginning in April. Next slide, please. And this is the very edge of our property. So what we've done is we've taken all of the MTS school buses, we've moved them from entering and exiting off of Hillsborough Road. They now enter and exit on Richard Jones, much further away from the intersection with Hillsborough. So you're looking at the bus loop where the internal buses come in and turn, but it's given us a great opportunity to really segregate our traffic, which is good for the surrounding community. It's also good for our own participants that we don't have buses and parents and visitors all coming and going from the same area. We were able to close 2 of the curb cuts along Hillsborough Road, which gives us now 1 curb cut for Hillsborough at the intersection with the mall, which really helps aid a lot of the traffic congestion that we were contributing to Hillsborough Road. Next slide, please. So this is a view from the end of that bus turnaround, just looking back north. I think you can see we really don't have a lot of work that has been completed in front of Hillsborough, but I do think you can look further down on the right side at how close to the road the building actually comes. So I want to make sure we were clear that the reason why the the enclosed waiting area is a little bit to the south is because there's simply not enough real estate between the building and the road to also have that enclosed waiting area up further to the north. Next slide, please. So most of our work now is being concentrated in the back. This is the single level precast structure that we're building. It will have covered parking on the ground level for students and staff. The upper level is a full soccer field that will be connected in at the second floor level to the building. Everything you see on the left of the screen is phases 1 and 2 that have been completed. And then what you're seeing from the middle of the screen over where the crane is the work that's underway now that it'll continue until about mid-April when it completes. Next slide, please.
And Anna, I hate to interrupt. We need to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes if we can, even though we love it. We love it. It's so interesting.
Let's skip this slide then. All right, this is just diagrammatically what you've already seen in the renderings. Again, the separation between the large shelters is the main entrance into Hillsborough High School. Next slide, please. This shows you that the experience coming up the sidewalk. We do have a 10-foot wide sidewalk. We do have the large canopy structures, which will allow for the covered boarding and lighting. We do have small semi-enclosed waiting areas for people who are not going to be staying long. And you can see there's a lot of transparency with the glass roof, trying to make sure that the views through to the school are as open as possible. Next slide, please. A little bit better view. We've got leaning rails for people who are waiting for a short period of time. We have benches inside, multi-layers of lighting for safety and security, digital displays for next buses. We have USB ports for charging. We have ADA accessibility, and again, a lot of transparency. Next slide, please. The small waiting area is designed to be complementary of the mid-century modern Keeble 1953 section of the building. You'll see a lot of transparency there. We've hidden the mechanical equipment on the roof. You can see the doors kind of toward the back of the small waiting. That is our driver restroom and our electrical rooms and a covered bike rack area. Next slide, please. We have a couple of views inside just to show you the amenities inside the climate-controlled waiting. We do have seating, the work counter with outlets and USB. We have outlets and USB charging around the seating areas. We have the digital displays with the next bus information. These are views, you're looking out towards Hillsborough Road. Also great views up and down the street for getting to see when that next bus comes from the Abbott Martin intersection. Next slide, please. The other side of the interior will have ticket vending machines available, water fountains with bottle fillers, an emergency call box in addition to the emergency call box outside, and a janitor closet for easy cleanup. And with that, I will turn it back over to Trey.
Just to wrap things up for our schedule, we are currently reviewing a design package with hopes to complete our design and publish our bid documents in December, with a board action on station construction coming in the first quarter of next year and construction advancing in that April to August timeline with the MNPS project joining that part of the site. So that's what we have. We'll take any questions.
And Madam Chair, this is Steve Blaine. The only point I would add is they're very close to getting the construction documents together. So I know as we were approaching the final stages of the central renovations, we had a couple good pieces of input from the MTA board that we were able to incorporate into that renovation. So I think what Trey is saying is, Trey and Anna are saying now is speak now or forever hold your peace, and then you can only complain about the end product after the fact.
Okay, any feedback, questions? Great report. We really appreciate all the hard work on it, and it's super exciting project. So thank you again, Anna and Trey. So we've got I'm sorry, Gail.
I just said it looks good. I drove by not too long ago and it looks well, so.
It really does. So
Mary, did you have your hand up?
We have a hand on the floor from Mary Griffin.
Thought so.
I did. I thought that was what I was supposed to do. So yes, I put my hand up. I just want to say I want to appreciate from the design on behalf of those of us that are riders that you very much took into account that we don't just have sun issues when we're waiting for buses in Nashville, but we have rain issues. And I'd like to say that because it was one of the major complaints of the downtown station that we would often be sopping wet, by the time that our bus would come because the little circular mushrooms do not provide close to enough actually sun or rain. And so if I had been on earlier calls, that would have been a comment. And I'm very thrilled to see that there's adequate protection from the elements as well here. Thank you.
Great first comment, Mary, contributing in your first meeting. That's awesome. Any other questions or comments before we move?
Yes.
We've got 2 more action items.
There's Walter.
Yes.
Walter?
Trey, do we have an overhead crosswalk from the mall to the shelter?
There's not one that's overhead. No, sir. It's going to be at the northernmost part of the transit center, tying into that intersection that's being rebuilt.
So pedestrian access will be facilitated exactly how?
It's a crosswalk that's got new signal heads that's timed, allowing pedestrian response with push buttons located on the signal poles.
That actually the push buttons actually
Yes.
are responded to.
That's
All
right. Yep.
They're not pseudo push buttons. All right.
They work. They're
Should be the overall intersection configuration, Walter, should be much safer than what you see as the current condition, both for pedestrians going back and forth to the mall, as well as the traffic interactions there. So a lot of thought, with or without our transit center, was put into that pedestrian safety issue.
Great. All right.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Thank you again, Anna and Trey. Great report. So the NICE committee has one more action item that's really important and should be a pretty short discussion. And Ed's going to bring that to us.
Yes, ma'am. On page 26, we have been receiving several requests to consider Tuesday, November the 3rd, election day, to be a free fair day in order to maximize the opportunities for voter turnout. And we think it's a good idea. We wanted to recommend it to the board. As far as a financial impact, I looked back at the past, it's hard to look with the COVID episode going on, but for the past 4 Tuesdays back in September, we were averaging about $8,500 in cash collections. There would not be any prorating on time-based fair media, but in the big scheme of things, $8,500 on our total operating budget, I don't think would be materially felt, and would like the board to consider having election day be a free fair day. We do have precedent in that. We have done free fair days before, and I just think it would be a good idea for the board to consider.
Okay, great. I'll chime in first and then I'd love to hear from the other board members. I just think this is kind of a no-brainer. I think this is a great idea. I can't think of anything more important than everybody being able to get out to vote. So I would strongly support the idea, but would love to hear from other board members.
I feel the exact same way. I just think it's really an important opportunity for us to be a leader in this. So.
Okay. Walter, Mary, any thoughts?
Yeah. Hearing from 2 of the members of the Academy of Women of Achievement, I feel I have no choice but to agree with them.
Well, there's a comment. Mary, any thoughts from you, Ms. Griffin?
I'm absolutely for it. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I think that that as much as we can tie the ridership with, the civic duty as well. I just think that it's wonderful. We should give everybody access. I'm for that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So if there's no other comments or questions, then the NICE committee will recommend to the full board to approve Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020 as a free fare day. If approved by the board, in just a minute, fares would be waived for the entire November 3rd, 2020 service day. So that is a recommendation to the board, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Ms. Miller. With that being a recommendation from the committee, it does not require a second, so I'll put it to vote. So I will go to each of you and ask if you are a yay or a nay. Mary Griffin.
Mary Griffin, big yay.
Okay, Walter Searcy.
Oh, yay.
Oh, yay. Janet Miller.
Janet Miller, yay.
And Gail Carr-Williams, a yay. So the motion passes, and congratulations. And I'm just really excited for Nashville.
Right. That concludes the NICE committee, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Miller. That was quite a report today. Lots of information that we're taking in today. I am going to readjust the agenda. And what I'm going to do is pull up in the agenda the other business, which is the extension of the CEO's employment agreement. And I'm going to call on our General Counsel, Margaret Bim, to set this up for us.
You see on the last page of the agenda, a short statement about CEO Steve Bland's contract. We first entered into a contract with Steve Bland on August 25th, 2014. It was a 5-year contract. 3 years later, the board decided that it would extend his contract for another 3 years. So he would have, as of 2017, a 5-year contract that would extend through 2022. You also gave a bonus to him and also increased his base salary 2.5% beginning July 1, 2018. The chair has met with Mr. Bland and is recommending to the board that you extend his contract for 3 more years so that he would have a 5-year contract again that would extend through December 30th. Is that right? Yes, December 31st, 2025. So, Madam Chair, that is the recommendation of you and me, although I don't make recommendations. But the recommendation is to extend Mr. Bland's contract that is now goes through June 30th, 2022 to the December 31st, 2025.
Well, thank you, Margaret, and that is my recommendation. But let me just say this before. I just want to make certain that we talk a little bit about the process we went through, and I thank you very much, Margaret, for all of your good work on this. There was an evaluation and thought process about Steve, and Steve also provided us with his feedback about his own performance. But what I really want to say is that I think that Steve has done a tremendous job of leading this organization. And an exemplary job. And I think that has sort of shown itself in several ways. Through COVID, it's just been remarkable. And the stresses that I cannot imagine that are on you, Steve, and all of your staff, you all continue to shine through. And my appreciation is deep and wide for that. Secondly, I think you have a team that continues to work very flawlessly together and support all of the necessary work, and that's through your leadership that the team is able to work so well. Proud of all of them as well. So for me, I think to be able to continue this and Steve wanting to agree to stay in with us is like a really plus. And for us to want Steve to stay in with us is incredible. I say this all the time. I continue to be exceedingly proud of having this opportunity to serve in this way and to be able to serve with such excellent professionals is enlightening and it is inspiring. And I think the city of Nashville is extremely lucky to have Steve Bland as our leader. So I wholeheartedly recommend this amendment to his contract. And since that is my recommendation, Margaret, I feel like I should know the answer to this, but just to make certain, since it's my recommendation, do I need to have a motion for it?
Yeah.
You're muted.
Yes, I think that'd be a good idea because it's not a committee report.
I thought I was a committee of one. I guess not. I'm not rolling like that like I thought, right? I thought I needed a motion. So if I can have a motion,
Yeah.
So is that a motion from Walter?
Yes, I move to adopt the recommendation of the chair and the shadow recommendation of general counsel.
It's real shadowy.
Mary Griffin, move to second, please.
And there is a second from Mary Griffin. So if the record reflects this, there is a motion and a second, and I'll ask if there is any discussion. With there being no discussion, I will call for a vote. Mary Griffin, do you vote yay or nay?
Yay.
Mary Griffin is a yay. Janet Miller?
Janet Miller, yay.
Walter Searcy?
Yay, yay.
Yay, yay. That does not count for 2 votes. So the good thing is we don't need to. We're good. And Gail Carl Williams is a yay. So the motion carries. Steve, we're here to support you, and we're very proud of you, and very proud to be able to do this with your contract.
Thank you all. I appreciate it very much.
So saying that, I'm going to go back again, right? Because I know some might have to fall off by 4 o'clock. So in light of that, I'm going to go back to Steve. How about you give us your report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in the interest of time, I will keep it short. Again, appreciate everyone's patience in our virtual environment. Appreciate Monica, our entire IT team, and everybody else involved in getting WebEx to work relatively correctly. Operations continue to be, quote, COVID normal. Dan had reported on ridership. We currently have 10 employees out on COVID-related leave. 3 of those are folks who tested positive. They are not seriously ill at this point, and the other 7 are awaiting test results. Looking at ridership patterns and the Better Bus program, both our planning and our operations staff are looking at potential changes in service structure that you can expect to see over the next few months to begin discussion on what we start to do emerging out of the pandemic. Trey and Anna did a great job. I will not rehash anything regarding the Hillsborough Transit Center site, but on a couple of other projects. I heard Mr. Bull reference the Nolensville project. Out of our 18 shelter sites, 12 have been completed, 5 more under construction. 4 of these should be completed within the next couple months. The 2 big stations down at Walmart will take a bit longer. And Trey is also working with the designers on our fairground station, which is a little bit more complicated because of the proposed intersection relocation in conjunction with the fairgrounds project and the fact that that site is actually in the Browns Creek floodplain. The North Nashville Transit Center keeps chugging along. We had 2 council actions that were approved by the full council about a week or 2 ago, one relative to a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, the other relative to the programming of the local funding. Both of those passed the full council unanimously, and we actually got approval on the pilot agreement from the Industrial Development Board this morning. So we're good to go on that project. Next steps are Trey is working with our engineers to start speccing the demolition of on-site structures. Rita and Amber and Trey have initiated outreach with the adjoining property owners on the project itself, and we'll start to kick off design. Probably get into an active public engagement process on design right after the first of the year. And toward that end, I want to thank and congratulate Felix and our planning team who were able to secure a highly competitive $150,000 federal HOPE grant. No good federal program goes without a great acronym. This one happens to stand for Helping Obtain Prosperity for Everyone. A very competitive grant program designed toward improving the conditions in communities that have persistent poverty. So this project and our design effort fit very well into the Federal Transit Administration's goals. Another project that Trey and the group are working on is addressing our sinkhole at the Nestor facility. And I'm looking forward to Mary working with you on your orientation meeting next week, where you will get copious detail on all of the conditions at our Nestor garage, which really is our workhorse garage. We continue to support the mayor's office as needed in the advancement of a citywide, Mayor Cooper's citywide transportation plan. A lot of activity over the past month with various staff, including myself, participating with Faye DeMassimo on virtual meetings with a variety of interest groups on it, and that continues to plug along. Earlier this week, I sent you all the link to our Better Bus, our interactive web page on Better Bus, and major kudos to our planning staff and our marketing and communications staff for setting that site up. Really will give riders in particular the opportunity to see, for lack of a better word, what's in it for them with respect to the Better Bus program. Dan and his team continue to chug along on our new fare collection system project. We've got ticket vending machines coming into stock, being installed in Central. We are signing up our beta testers for the quick ticket program. And beta testing should really be beginning within the next month or so, with full-scale implementation coming first, second quarter of 2021. Finally, I always try to keep up to speed on the RTA side. All of our new to us passenger cars on the WeGo store are in service and operating well. We recently got our second rebuilt locomotive back. It's being tested by railroad staff now and should enter full service within the next couple weeks. Third locomotive has been sent off for rebuilding, and that should take a few months. Our Mount Juliet Station expansion project is just about complete. Some punch list items going on, some landscaping being finished up, some fencing, but it looks really good. Feedback from the city has been excellent. There's an adjoining transit-oriented development. So if you find yourself out in the Mount Juliet area, it's worth a stop at that station. It really is starting to take shape as the sort of transit-oriented development, multimodal sort of center that we can use as sort of a guideline for the rest of the region. I want to add words of welcome to Mary on behalf of myself and the staff. I don't want to make any accusations of the other members, but I've been to all of your appointment hearings at council or your reappointment hearings. And hers, I think, probably went the smoothest of all of them. I think Mary got one question, and then it was unanimous endorsement from the appointments committee and the full council. So we're looking very much forward to working with you. And then the last thing I'll add, Madam Chair, is again, my appreciation and thanks to the board, not only for renewing and extending my employment agreement, but for your continued partnership as we try to build and improve services in the Nashville region. So I thank you not only on my own behalf, but on behalf of my wife, who just likes Nashville too much to consider any other options. So we both appreciate your confidence and your partnership. With that, unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Steve. What a great report, right? So I'll just start off on my report saying, you've earned this. And so we're just grateful that you said yes as well. So thank you. And we look forward to the years together to continue to working. And Mary, once again, welcome. And I'm so grateful to have you here. I think Janet is off the line, and I think I may have mentioned it before we got started, and I know Walter mentioned it. I just want to congratulate her again on her being chosen as a Woman of Achievement with the YWCA. Janet has done so many incredible things in our community, and to be recognized and honored that way, I know personally what an honor that is and how much recognition, that kind of recognition means for people. So I'm really proud of Janet, and I'm proud of all that she does in our community. So well done, Janet. I know you left us, but there's a record. It'll be, make sure you put that in there, Monica, so she knows. But she knows how I feel about her. So I'm excited about that. I'm really excited about the Better Bus and the interactive piece that we could do, so more people have an opportunity to have their voices heard and be a part of this process. You all continuously find innovative ways for our passengers and our community to be a part of what we do, even in this sort of different environment that we find ourselves in. So I appreciate the innovation and the openness and the communication that's being done by everybody. Really proud of that. The sinkhole that you talk about, I think we've talked about that sinkhole for quite a while now. I think I learned what a sinkhole was from MTA, but it's okay. But and Monica, is that your hand up? You're good. Okay. So I'm just really excited about all the work that we're doing. I continue to praise every chance I get for everybody who's out here making certain that transit is available and that transit is safe for all the citizens of Nashville. Again, I know that this work is not hard, and I want everybody at MTA WeGo to know that your good work, your safe work, and your commitment to Nashvillians does not go unnoticed, and this board appreciates everybody's efforts. And with that, that concludes my report. Oh, I will want to say one thing to Jason and Dan. I know that you've been deferred, but we're going to find a way to make certain that you have a great opportunity to bring your reports. I know how hard you work on them. And I just want you to know that we're not forgetting about you. We're just going to find another time and bring it back and cheer you all on for the work that you're doing. Do know that we appreciate it and appreciate that you're okay with us deferring it. So thank you both very much for that. And with that, that concludes my report, unless there's something else that somebody needs from me. If not, then, oh, and one more thank you, Margaret. Thank you again for all your work on helping me with this adjustment to Steve's contract. So with all that being said, I'll make a motion for adjournment.
So move.
There's a motion, and I know Mary's gonna second it.
Second.
All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for all your work. Appreciate you.